Welcome to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. I'm Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
This show features questions from the Personality Hacker community that we answer in about 10 minutes. We've been using personality types in our coaching for years, and we'd love to answer your questions about personal growth through the lens of type. You can find out more about us at personalityhacker.com. Okay, now let's hear today's question.
Identifying as a black male ENFP, what role does race/culture play in how others accept your natural personality type?
Thank you, Ernest, for the question. I think it's a really apt question, especially right now in the time period we live when a lot of people are talking about these ideas and concepts. I'll just say this. I don't know if we're experts on the issue of race or people groups in that regard, but we'll look at it through the lens of our profiler training and typology in general. One of the first exercises that we give our profiler training students at the beginning of their 6-month class is to list and identify the ways they're already typing people, the way they're already profiling people and putting them into categories. And a lot of people come up with basic ways of, socioeconomic status. Sometimes it's race, sometimes it's station of life, age. There's a bunch of ideas, with the car that people drive, whatever. We all have our individual ways that we categorize people in our lives. And we think that type and understanding of personality is a much richer, more fidelity way, if that's a way to say it, of looking at somebody, right? Not just their external markers, but how their mind is wired. Not just the behavior, but how their mind is wired. And we found a lot of value going down that road.
Yeah. So, there's two ways to ask this question, which is, how do I see myself, depending upon my culture, my race, as a person of a certain personality type, and then how are people going to respond to me? And like you just mentioned, Joel, we give the assignment. The actual assignment isn't how are they as an individual doing it. It's actually a twofold assignment. It's how are they as an individual doing it, and then also how do they see other people doing it.
Yeah.
And race, socioeconomic status, how a person's dressed, all of these things tend to be what we say other people are using to categorize people, but we always see ourselves as doing a much better job. And I think the phrase is high fidelity, right? We're doing it in a higher fidelity way. We're seeing beyond those shallow markers. But I think the reason why we get that answer time and time again is because it is very common for people to use whatever is the fastest, easiest marker in the outside world to try to get as much data as humanly possible. And while the color of one's skin, I don't believe, is a very good way of determining the human, culture can be a little bit richer of a way to do it. And those two things get conflated all the time. The assumption that if we are of a certain skin tone, we must be a part of a certain culture is I think it's our brain just goes, okay, what's the fastest information I can access? And what's the most amount of access for the least amount of work that I can do for this person? And so we use those kinds of markers all the time to try to pattern what we think is going to be our experience, because we can't get to know every single human being on the planet in as rich, a way as they deserve. So we're going to take these huge patterned leaps, and we're better and worse at them, depending upon, who's trained us and how we have been encouraged to see these markers.
Yeah, for example, every time I hear a British person speak with a British accent, it's really hard for me not to think that that person is more intelligent than other people. For some reason, I have conflated intelligence with a British accent.
Is that all British accents, or is it just the poshy ones?
Yeah, like My Fair Lady, Cockney accent, maybe not. So yeah, posh British. I'm talking about, like the high British accent that comes out, and it just signals. I have to really think. Okay, this person's probably not more intelligent than the average person just because they have this accent.
Right.
But it was something that I conflated early in life that I still tend to conflate if I'm not mindful of it. And I think we have those in all areas of life. Like we do it with so many different markers. And again, it's a fast trim tab for our brain to gather that information to move forward quickly.
Yeah. All right. So all of those caveats aside, which is here's the terrible way that people are making assumptions about others. I think type actually helps us move beyond some of those markers and realize that there's patterns in how we're pre-wired beyond the most shallow levels. And so I think type is actually a really great tool to be able to pattern things quickly that are a much richer, less shallow way to understand another human being for the most amount of information in the least amount of time. That said, you're showing up as an ENFP. So I think what hasn't been asked...
Ernest, not me.
Yeah, exactly.
Who asked the question?
Yeah, Ernst. Not you, Joel, who is also an ENFP. But I think what wasn't asked, but where my brain goes is how are you going to change your behavior as an ENFP or have somebody who has ENFP preferences if people respond to you in a way that doesn't allow those ENFP preferences to come out as naturally, which I think is part of why we learn type and is part of the human condition. What if the outer world is responding to me in a way that is more reactionary to my physical appearance and the way I'm showing up than it is based on how I would authentically show up, which is more based on that pre-wiring, more based on my mental processes? And is there going to be a disconnect between those two things? Am I going to change and alter how I show up based on these expectations of others, based on the shallow criteria, than I would if I was more free to show up the way that I truly feel? And how is that going to impact and affect me? And if I go to that question, that's something that I have also struggled with. I have ENTP preferences and I'm a woman. So I'm not usually engaged with in a way that expects me to show up with those ENTP preferences. The assumption, I think everybody assumes women are going to be, well, first of all, feelers, right? And I think second of all, not just feelers, but with extroverted feeling or harmony preferences. Name any stereotype about a woman and it goes back to a very undeveloped understanding of the function of extroverted feeling or harmony, it feels like. And so do I show up differently based on that? Absolutely. Absolutely, I show up differently. I am a less caustic ENTP than ENTPs are usually described as. These people who love to debate and are constantly trying to engage other people in conflict and show up as sort of like, they just assume that the entire world is going to organize around them and, they get what they want and they're always manipulating other blah, 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 right? ENTP. And they're going to be scientists that invent things and they're going to look like Doc Brown. It's like, a lot of these stereotypes, well, first of all, there's dumb stereotypes that kind of help people sort of access on an archetypal level what this type might mean, but they're all men. And so as a woman and as somebody who has been socialized to show up in certain ways, I'm definitely a softer version of an ENTP. And I've noticed this for a lot of ENTP women. They're not the debaters that we're all told we're supposed to be because we weren't told we were supposed to be that thing, right? We were socialized out of it. We needed to be a little nicer, a little more honey than vinegar, a little more socialized to lean on that extroverted feeling or harmony place. So when we're in that context, and I'm just saying, yeah, I do think that how people treat us and what their expectations of us are is absolutely going to impact our relationship to our cognitive functions. I think there's good things and bad things that come from that. The first thing is that we have to learn to use our functions in a slightly different way. We have to learn to navigate the world with our cognition in a way where we can meet it halfway. And that gives us a couple different benefits and it gives us a couple different challenges. The first benefit it gives us is that we have a tendency to be less one-sided. If we show up with our natural strengths and the entire world stands up and cheers in every context, we're just going to keep doubling down on those things. We're going to go, oh, this is my gravy train. This is the thing I'm supposed to do at all situations in all moments. So why would I ever become a more complex, well-rounded human being? So when the world goes, no, you're not supposed to do that. No, we don't see you that way. No, stop doing that. We got to go, okay, well, how do I balance all of this out? How do I smooth out those rough edges? How do I become a person who's got a little bit more going on than just that, driver, co-pilot, dominant auxiliary? So that's one of the great gifts it gives us, is that it actually encourages us to be more well-rounded and less one-sided. The disadvantage or the challenge it gives us, or the primary one, is that as we age, we need to find a way to reclaim what is our birthright. All right. Our birthright is to be able to be this cognition, to focus on the aspects of reality that are within our wheelhouse, to be stewards of those. And if we've been trained out of that, or have been forced to constantly sort of meet it halfway and be less assertive with the things that we are naturally wired as, then at a certain point we got to go, okay, well, that was great, and thank you for helping me be more well-rounded, and thank you for helping me be less one-sided, and also now it's time for me to plant my flag in the ground. Now it's time for me to really accept how I have been pre-wired and honor that and become the best version of that, regardless of how people are responding to me. And that is the work of a lifetime, honestly. And that's where you head next. So I do think that all of these things have implications. I do believe that it impacts us. It's going to very much show up in what we call personality traits, not the type. So our personality type is going to stay the same, but the traits are going to change, and traits are our behaviors, right? Like sort of our socialized behaviors. It's absolutely going to show up in that. It's going to give us some benefits, being less one-sided, being a little bit of a different version of the type, I think oftentimes. But it's also going to present the challenge of overcoming that socialization, of overcoming the roles that people have put us in. And then when we do that, now we reclaim who we are, and now we truly individuate.
Yeah. And so I basically, from what you just said, I'm kind of patterning this like 3-part stage thing. One is me and my cognition, how I feel about myself. One is my tribe, the tribe I come from, my family of origin, the community I associate with myself with, extended family, etc., people I'm engaged with all the time. And there is going to be a collective story about ourselves that we have. And then there's the other tribe outside of my tribe that projects stories onto me and my tribe, both individually and collectively. And it's almost these 3 areas that we're looking at. And I would say that can be complex to stay true to yourself, especially as like an ENFP, stay true to you and who you are authentically, both inside your tribe that has stories about itself and the tribes outside that keep telling you stories about yourself. And it's like all these moving targets, all this complexity. That can be a challenge, I think, for anybody in any context, and particularly certain demographics, certain people, I think, have a tougher time of it than others. Some people have more advantage and some people have more challenge. And so the individual has to basically take an assessment, an account, an audit of their life and determine, okay, where can I stretch and flex and flow my personality? Where can I express more of who I truly am, both against what my own tribe is telling me and the other tribes are trying to project onto me? It's about who I am in this world.
Right, which is the path of individuation. And so you've got those 3 layers. You've got self, intimates, and others. And we travel through those, but our goal is to lead back to the self. And when we are able to do that, a lot of times when we truly get to that place of individuation, we start to bless all of those challenges. We start to be grateful for everything that required a little bit more time and effort to figure out who we were in the midst of all of it, because it's like the path to us, really. And a lot of times when somebody is just, they roll out the red carpet for them, they really struggle to discover those more discrete parts of who they were because they didn't have to. There was no real pushback. There was no challenge there. So, hard times are not easy to bless. It's not easy to be like, yay, I had a rough go of it. And yet there is something to be said for having to find the self in the midst of all of this, of all of the muck and the quagmire.
Thanks for the question. You can ask your own question about personality types or personal growth. Visit personalityhacker.com/questions. We also have programs designed to help you with your personal growth through the lens of personality types. Again, visit personalityhacker.com and find the program that's made just for you. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. We'll talk with you on the next episode. If you're focused on personal growth, I think you'll resonate with our core content over at personalityhacker.com. We want to see you understand how your mind is wired so you can generate motivation, improve social skills, find career opportunities, and master excellent decision making. But a quick warning, we are advice and action focused in all of our articles, podcasts, and videos. This means that we attract people who like to be challenged to become excellent, to take action, to put in the work to optimize themselves, not simply just gather more information. If you are committed to personal growth and ready to radically find your inner truth, then come over and be a part of our growing community of like minds at Personality Hacker.